Well, if there's one subject that always makes good conversation, it must be the weather. And we've certainly been having rather a lot of it recently. And the beginning of last year was no exception, when islanders suffered what has become described in local annals as the Great Channel Islands Snow Blizzard. Jersey was worst hit, and once the snow started coming down in earnest, it wasn't long before main roads were turning into toboggan runs. Many businesses sent employees away early, and once the school children were home, the bus services were suspended. Travelling became impossible in many areas, the airport had to close, and cars were left abandoned in snowdrifts, with the police advising everyone to stay at home. Channel's snow desk carried reports of parts of the island cut off behind 20-foot deep drifts, but fortunately the Arctic conditions lasted only 4 days. There followed a massive clean-up job conducted by Public Works, the RRB and the Honorary Police, many of whom had already been working overtime in dreadful conditions. Well, thanks to their efforts, things got back to normal fairly soon, with the exception of the island's cauliflower crop, which was unfortunately devastated by the frost. February will certainly be remembered by Mr. and Mrs. Percy Major, an elderly couple who lived at Jersey's first tower. In the middle of the afternoon of the 23rd, a violent explosion ripped through their house, blowing out the walls on one side. Both were rushed to hospital, but although 60-year-old Mrs. Jessie Major was detained for some time, her 80-year-old husband Percy was released within hours. The fire service put the explosion down to a gas leak in the ground floor bedroom, ignited by a paraffin heater in the kitchen. And there were more explosions still to come, during the detonation of 19 roll mines which had been found at Gorey Castle. The bombs had been found inside the castle walls, and they were to be dealt with in a massive 4-hour combined operation between the RAF using a Puma helicopter and the Army Bomb Disposal Squad. The object of the exercise was to airlift the shells from the castle and fly them in special sandbagged crates out to Seymour Tower off La Roque Point. At no point would the shells be flown over houses, ensuring that the civilian population would be safe, and once assembled in the sand near the tower, they could all be detonated safely. Major Barry Birch, the man who likes to sit astride bombs as he diffuses them, then set a series of beehive charges on the shells. Then came that window-rattling moment that we'd all been waiting for.
Firing!
Well, from blowing all those big holes in the ground, we now shift our attention to Guernsey, where for some time earlier this year, a dedicated group of people had been shifting earth in a much more gentle style. Of course, they were the team of archaeologists who excavated the dolmen which had been discovered on Landcrest Common. It's believed that this is the first excavation of its type to have been undertaken in Western Europe, and already the group have discovered a complex ritual structure of mounds surrounding the dolmen. The site has been estimated as being at least 5,000 years old, and next spring the work will be continued, and it's likely that the burial chamber will be opened then. And whilst on the subject of ancient discoveries, we mustn't forget the location of a Roman wreck outside St. Peter Port by local diver Richard Keane. He salvaged 5 amphora, one of which he now describes.
It was used for carrying wine, olives, garum, which is a fish sauce, which these actual amphoras probably carried. They were wheel turned, so a potter made them on a wheel, which, when you look at them closely, looks very, very hard.
Going back to Jersey, and beautiful May sunshine heralded the high spot of the year for local cattle breeders, with the RJAHS Spring Show. Over 530 animals were entered in what was thought to have been the best supported show in the history of the island breed. And the event itself came as a fitting climax to the World Jersey Cattle Bureau Conference of the week before, which had brought breeders from all over the world to the home of the Jersey cow. Meanwhile, in Guernsey, throughout the first half of the year, the local bus company had been featuring regularly in the news. Following the introduction of pay-as-you-enter schemes, there had been a storm of public criticism over the use of old unlit buses as waiting rooms. Next came a work to rule, with the drivers demanding more pay, which ended abruptly when the company threatened to close down the business. Well then, after the company's local premises had been sold, the company itself was sold and taken over by new owners. But to give the saga a happy ending, the latest news is that the new company have introduced reduced fares for pensioners. But whilst one Guernsey institution continued its existence, another, the local branch of the Old Contemptibles, veterans of the First World War, was laid to rest in August. Peter Rouse asked Major General Wilfred Collings why the group were disbanding.
Well, because all the members are now well over 80 and several of them are over 90, and it's no longer possible to be active.
How many people do you have left locally that were in the First War?
We have 12, of whom about 8 are mobile, I might say.
Then in Jersey, this happened.
By all accounts, the fog couldn't have come at a worse time. Here at Jersey Airport should be a normal Saturday afternoon in August. In the week, the tourism say the island is full to bursting. On the weekend, the people are trying to get home. And here they are trying to get home. There are 10 aircraft waiting now. It's purely a race against time as the fog rolls in, and according to the Met men, is here to stay for some time.
But very few were lucky enough to get away, and by the Sunday afternoon, 10,000 tourists were marooned. The airport was reminiscent of a refugee camp with facilities stretched to the limits.
We've been here since 11 o'clock yesterday morning.
And what do you think about the arrangements that have been made?
They're atrocious. Atrocious. There's no other word for it. At 12 o'clock last night, we were shipped out to hotels to stay in lounges. We were charged for breakfast. We were not given very many facilities. There were no blankets provided, and we lay on chairs, floors, anywhere else. We were told to come back here at 8 o'clock this morning, and we've been sitting here since 8 o'clock this morning.
With 3 days of luggage piling up, the only place to put it was on the runway apron. And when the fog finally lifted, British Airways flew in a TriStar Airbus to shift as many people as quickly as possible. But the arrival of the TriStar did not signal a massive increase in British Airways' commitment to the Channel Islands. In fact, it was a portent of doom, as British Airways soon announced that they were pulling out of Guernsey altogether and would only operate from Jersey to London and Manchester. Fortunately, the vacuum was filled by other independent companies, not without controversy, but at least no routes were lost. In the same week that fog closed the airport, a dull grey also settled on mainland television sets tuned to ITV. Only a little earlier, ITN news reports on the miners' conference in Jersey had been beamed from Channel via a special satellite link to the national newsroom. That equipment gave a new look to Channel's Jersey studios, and certainly throughout the strike, the whole of Channel's output, which depended on our new video cameras, was completely transformed, notably by the emergence of the hour-long Report at 6 extra programme, which proved so popular that the regular Report at 6 was promoted to run 4 nights a week. But it was in the first week of the strike that the sad news came that Guernsey's Chancellor of the Exchequer, Conseiller Peter Dorey, had been lost at sea in the ill-fated Fastnet yacht race. Conseiller Dorey was washed away by a heavy wave that overturned his yacht Cavale in the early hours of the morning. But Conseiller Dorey was not the only Channel Islander in the race, and fortunately the others survived the disaster. One of them was John Coleman.
I looked back and saw what I can only describe as a wall of water, very high, coming very fast towards us. I probably saw it for about 2 seconds, 3 seconds before it hit, and there was nothing anybody could do about it. The boat was pitch-poled. That means that we somersaulted over, that the back somersaulted over the front of the boat, as opposed to capsizing sideways. And the next thing we knew was the boat was the right way up. We were hanging on very tight. In fact, the 3 people who were in the cockpit were on the end of their lifelines. I was still hanging on to the boat. by some miracle, nobody was damaged. The boat itself was dismasted, and the port side, the left-hand side of the coach roof was completely smashed to pieces, and about 2 feet of water in the boat.
For our penultimate item, we mustn't forget the little island of Alderney, which saw an extremely moving event when Alderney deportees, who had been imprisoned on the island in what virtually amounted to concentration camp conditions, returned for a memorial service. Hundreds of slave labourers, some of them from as far away as Russia, had perished in the camp, but the survivors had returned regularly to remember their colleagues and exchange experiences. This service was to be the last one, and because it was particularly well attended. Lastly, of course, we cannot forget the arrival in November of Jersey's new Lieutenant Governor, General Sir Peter Whiteley. He arrived on HMS Jersey with his wife, Lady Whiteley, and was greeted at the quayside by the bailiff Sir Frank Errow and Lady Errow, together with a guard of honour. The next day he was sworn in as Governor in the Royal Court.
General Sir Peter Whiteley, are you prepared to take the oath of office of Lieutenant Governor of the island of Jersey? I am. You please raise your right hand. Puisqu'il a plu à Dieu, vous appelez à la charge du lieutenant-gouverneur des châteaux et îles de Jersey.
Well, that's it from Look Back at 79. I know I enjoyed looking back through the film library archives, and I hope you enjoyed the little snatch that we've been able to show you tonight. Unfortunately, we were unable to show all the events, but I hope you enjoyed what you did see.